welcome back, Illumineers. Thank you for joining me again in the in Lorcana as we continue the review of the Rise of the Floodborn set. So today we're going over the color Emerald, and Emerald got a lot of good cards in this set. So if you think you've seen a lot of Emerald, you haven't seen enough of it yet. Um, so I'm going to go over mostly the competitive cards and some of the other ones as side notes. Um, this is our first Arthur. This is an Arthur, but we've if you'd seen our Amethyst review, there is the Arthur, and that's one which is actually primo good. This one's really good for limited play. Good stats, 2 lore, common, but not much else. Now we have a new legendary beast, and you're going to hear me say that again. 6 cost, inkable, 4/5, 2 lore. Storyborn Hero Prince, Beast Relentless. Whenever an opposing character is damaged, you may ready this character. So pairing Emerald with Steel gives you the ability to quest with Beast, shoots, hit something for damage, maybe not knock it out, or banish it, or maybe it didn't really matter. Um, then Beast readies, then you quest again, and you can repeat the cycle. What also makes it interesting is that if Beast is exerted and your opponent doesn't challenge him first, he's going to ready before they get a chance to challenge him. And so that locks them only into a few cards that can challenge ready characters, all of which are in this set. We'll get to those when we get to Steel. So yeah, this could be a very powerful character going forward. Apparently, we've been saying that with a lot of the Beast cards already. This is the second Emerald Legendary Beast card. The first one didn't see a ton of play, but now the meta's changing, so it may. This is another one that has some very combo-y potential. Try it out, play around with it, and see if it actually works the way we think it'll work. All right, Bell Bookworm. So there's a number of cards in Emerald that has bonuses based on if your opponent has no cards in hand. This Bell gets the quest for 3 if your opponent's empty-handed. Now, many of the non Steel Song decks can get empty-handed pretty quickly. They have added more card draw in this set in multiple colors of ink, so you have more options. So this one may or may not be useful. There is, however, a suite of additional discard effects in this set, and so a 3-costed character that can quest for 3 can close a game fairly quickly. So depending on where that discard deck ends up, you may see some of the Bell Bookworm. All right, Bell Hidden Archer. This is one of the Floodborn characters in this set. As a matter of fact, she was one of the first legendary spoiled. 5 cost not inkable, 3/3, 3 lore, shift for 3. And when this character is challenged, the challenging character's player discards all cards in their hand. So the 3/3 is very underwhelming. The 3 lore is very tempting. A shift cost of 3. We now have several bells. Um, we got this one that we just saw in green. We have one in blue from the previous set. Um, so you've got a few that you can shift onto for 3. Um, and if your opponent decides that they want to challenge Bell, it's going to cost them their hand. Now, the question is going to be, are there better effects? Um, this is one of the first effects that you will see in this set for discard. Um, After looking at all the cards in this set, right now, I think there are better um, characters that force opponents to discard cards than Bell Hidden Archer. Now, that being said, that could change drastically based on the meta and what decks come out of it. Um, so right now, it has my interest, but I don't think it's making the cut. All right, Bucky Squirrel Squeak Tutor. This small 2-cost inkable 1/1 with 1 lore has ward, and whenever you play a Floodborn character, each opponent chooses and discards a card. Depending on how many Floodborn characters that you're having in your deck, this ability is quite annoying, and it having ward means if it's ready, um, and you don't have one of the steel cards that lets you challenge him, um, well, this one of them's an action, the other two are characters, so I guess the 2 characters are the only ones that can do anything with Bucky. Um, it'd be hard to get rid of. Now, depending on how many cards you want to stuff in a deck with Floodborn, I guess the question now becomes, how many times does this trigger? Is it worth trying to squeeze too many in your deck? Right now, this is a card that I would think will be better several sets down the road than it is now, but this is definitely an effect you want to look for later on after the card pool gets larger. Not much to see here. It's another Cheshire Cat, although he does have nice stats to be able to take out Simba. Otherwise, it's blank. Now, the next card is a Floodborn in this set. It's 8-cost inkable or shift of 5 for a 5/6 and 2 lore with evasive. I missed the evasive part during a draft, and I was almost handcuffed by this character because this super rare has exert, banish, chosen, damaged character. Luckily for me, I was able to get it off the table, but it scared the crap out of me. Personally, I will be shifting this onto the 03 Cheshire Cat from set 1, because I think that was more effective. Your opponent's less likely to challenge it, and then when you flip to this, it's like, whoops, too late. This ability is going to be better based on the other color of ink that you're playing, particularly if you're playing steel. This is so much better. All right, when I said we had better cards for discard, this is one of those. Daisy Duck Secret Agent, 4-cost inkable 2/3 with 2 lore Whenever this character quests, each opponent chooses and discards a card. So it does everything that you want. Stats are a little low for a four-coster, but because it has 2 lore and this effect, it's understandable. Um, if you are playing a discard-based synergistic deck that wants to empty your opponent's hand and keep it empty most of the rest of the game, then you're going to want to play 4 of these. Donald Duck, Perfect Gentleman. This is an interesting card. 4-cost inkable, 2/5. With 2 lore, shifts for 3, and at the start of your turn, each player may draw a card. Now, I normally don't like giving my opponents cards. Um, however, if you're forcing them to discard all cards in their hand, or multiple cards in their hand, you don't mind making them draw a card because they can't do anything on your turn. Howling Mine was a powerful effect in its day. The problem was that let your opponent draw the card before you. This, however, everybody gets the card at the same time, but you get the most effect of it first. So I do think this is a playable card, both as extra card draw for yourself, and if you're running the discard strategy, just other ways to get cards out of your opponent's deck, because they're drawing them and then you're forcing them to be discarded. Number of copies you're wanting to play and all that, that's, again, more testing will be needed to figure that out. It's also at the same cost as Daisy, but shiftable if you happen to be playing a Donald from another ink color. Donald Duck Sleepwalker. Okay, so this is one of these cards that has a sub theme of when you play an action, you get a bonus. Right now, I still don't think that the action based deck is there. Very similar to the item based deck we had in set 1. I don't think there's enough actions to make enough of these cards playable. 3 costs for a 0/5 is not great, and your opponent gets to challenge into him, and he deals no damage to them. And so the only way you're dealing damage is if you play an action, and then he gets this bonus that you can challenge into. I don't think this one would be constructed worthy in any event. I'll be honest with you, it was not great in Limited either. This guy was a house, however. Dr. Facilier Fortune Teller, 7-cost inkable, 4/4, 3 lore, evasive, and when this character quests, chose an opposing character can quest during their next turn. Super rare. So one of my opponents in the event, or one of the players in my event, had this, and there are very few evasives in set 2, and there are very few evasives that can challenge in to this Dr. Facilier. Oddly enough, one of them being the Cheshire Cat, which we saw earlier, as well as the Dr. Facilier in Amethyst that's a 4/2. Apparently this guy was wrecking face. So depending on the color of ink at play, you may see more of this character in decks than, say, maybe John Silver or Mother Gothel. Um, they all sort of fit the same niche. Um, Now, this Dr. Facilier is not Floodborn and cannot be shifted, unlike one of the others. So you don't get a discount for this one. You actually have to pay the 7. But this is still a very powerful effect. Evasive and 3 lore mean it's going to be difficult to get off the table unless you have um, a, a card that directly removes it. This card was surprisingly good. The Enchantress, Unexpected Judge, 2 cost inkable 1/1 with 2 lore. While being challenged, this character has +2 strength and is a common. Um, so, yeah, I mean, it's an unassuming character, and if you don't have a way to ping or put it or give it 1 damage without challenging, you're going to be taking 3. um, and having 2 lore means at 2, you're going to force your opponent to, I need to get this off the table. And if you're not playing a color like steel, where you can just go fire the cannons, or I'll quest with Han's 13th in line and and ping her for 1, um, or even it's like some of the other cards we're going to see later on in the steel review. Um, it's actually, like I said, it's actually quite surprising. It's good in sealed and draft, and I think it will actually see play in constructed as well. Nothing here special except for this is a Flynn Rider uh, that now gives Emerald a 1 cost 1/3, and now gives it a shift target. Gives you another shift target. So this is another of the cards that um, is really good if your opponent's hand's empty. Now this one, instead of getting a bonus while your opponent's hand's empty, uh, for this one, this one, if your opponent's hand is not empty, it gets you a negative. So you can shift it for 2. Has evasive, so it's hard to get rid of. A 2/3 when you're shifting for 2 is fine. 4 lore is amazing, but the caveat is this character is -1 for each card in your opponent's hand. -1 lore. So if they have 4 cards in hand, you're not questing for anything. And so it's um, does this fit in the discard deck? Well, I would don't think you would want to stuff 4 in the deck. Um, you need a high velocity of cards that help you gain some advantages by forcing them to discard. Um, and he doesn't help that part. He only helps you for your win condition. Still, though, I think probably a couple of copies to shift onto some of the Flynn's that are left around, because I don't want to lose my cards, probably wouldn't hurt anything. Gaston, Scheming Suitor. Um, so this is another of the cards that deal with empty hands. So for this one, he's a 1/3 with 1 lore for 2. But if your opponent has no cards in their hand, this character is +3 strength. So he's a 4/3 for 2, which is well above curve. I actually saw where this is really good in draft, because draft and seal, you may not have enough card draw. Your hand's empty. Mid to late game. That it turns this into an effective beater that'll take out a lot of characters. So now, will it be needed in the discard deck? Right now, I don't see a spot for it. There are already more effective characters that you don't have to jump through this hoop to get working. All right, it's nice that they have Little John in the set. I hate that he's vanilla, but I mean, 6 cost, 6/6, and 2 lore. It's perfectly fine. We've seen this stat line before in set one, and I'm happy to have another Robin Hood character in here. Lucifer, cunning cat. So again, more more along the forced discard. That's why this is a 5 cost uninkable. Just a 2/2. Will quest for 2 lore. When you play this character, each opponent chooses and discards either 2 cards or 1 action card. Well, um, actions you're going to have in constructed. You're going to have some actions and or some items in your deck. You're not going to have a ton. Steel Song being the exception, simply because they need a massive amount of songs. So this might just simply be pay 5 for this body and discard 2. Um, and so it's really annoying. There's not much you can do when they play it, because you don't have to wait till he's challenged. You don't have to wait till he quests. It's just here you go. Also, for more fun, play with a card like Bounce or Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, and really make your opponent cry. All right. Next up is Pain, Underworld Imp. While this character has 5 strength or more, he gets +2 lore. I will say I tried to make this work in a limited pool, and I rarely was able to give him a strength bonus that I wasn't intentionally wanting him to challenge another character. Now, in the future, if there's more static cards with abilities, they give out a static bonus to strength, like some of the other cards we've already reviewed in this set. Um, then by all means he would become more powerful. But as he is, I don't even know if he's good in. He wasn't great for me in limited play, and I just don't see it in constructed with the current card pool. Now, Panic sort of fits the niche like Megara from set one. The downside here is he is not inkable where Megara is. You do get 2 lore for him, and this strength bonus is fine if you're trying to get a particular character off the board. Um, I don't foresee this being good in constructed. Limited, I did draft like 2 or 3 of these, along with a couple of pains, and it did let me get certain characters off the board because of the bonuses, the +2 or +4. But I wasn't overly impressed. This card, this card did demand an immediate answer in my draft. Pete Bad Guy, a 3/4 for 5, inkable, 2 lore, has ward. Whenever you play an action, this character gets +2 strength this turn, and while this character has 7 or strength or more, he gets +2 lore. So I originally I pack one picked one this first, because he's ward. He is already hard to deal with, and then you can pick up chunks of lore if you draft the right cards. um, where you can get up with the strength bonuses. Um, but even between all of the actions that I drafted, which were mostly removal cards, um, like Last Stand, um, and some of the steel removal in the set, it just wasn't enough. Now, just for it, I will say this: just for the base body and lore count and ward, he was fine for that because the games he made to the board, the opponent had to send two characters into Pete to get rid of him. And I will more than happily take a 2-for-1 trade for you to get rid of my character because that's less things I have to deal with on your side of the board. Constructed, not exactly sure where this is going to fall. Um, 5, particularly in Emerald, has a lot of spaces. They already have several three call, three lore characters right now, and de- de- depending on what you would definitely have to cut one, I think, to fit Pete in the deck. So we'll see if one of them gets replaced. I like Ward, particularly. First, it was very much so. I'm trying to figure out how good it is in the second after the second set, but we'll see. I like the idea though. Speaking of characters with Ward and annoying, Prince John, greediest of all. Uh, 3 cost non-inkable 1/2 with 2 lore has Ward, and when whenever your opponent discards one or more cards, you may draw a card for each card discarded. Yes, this card is as dumb as it reads. It is strong. It can't be dealt with by your opponent's targeted removal, like Fire the Cannons or Smash or Dragonfire. Um, and yes, you get the bonus of drawing cards by forcing your opponent to discard cards. And so it only takes one Prince John, and you can turn all your discard effects into cantrips where you draw a card for it. You get a second one on the board, and Lord have mercy, your opponent is in some deep trouble. Now, the biggest current issue that I see is Steel is still one of the more popular decks, and they're running 4 Grab Your Swords, and most are running 4 Tinkerbells, Giant Fairies. So if these get exerted for any reason to quest, um, they're going to be challengeable. And so you're either going to have to play Bodyguard with them, or you're going to have to play Resist with them to protect them from damage that they can't stop, because he is fragile. Because Grab Your Sword gets him, and if Giant Tink uh, challenges anything, I mean she's going to squish it, and then it gets to deal 2 more. But there's definitely a deck here. We've been seeing some of the results where this has already made an appearance. Queen of Hearts, quick tempered, 2 costed 1/2 with 2 lore, not inkable, villain queen. When you play this character, deal 1 damage to a chosen damaged opposing character. Um, for limited play, um, based on the cards that I saw, this was actually very effective. I had several other steel cards that dealt 1 and or 2 damage, and one that dealt more. Um, and so it made it very easy to pick off another character where, okay, I've only taken 1 damage or 2 damage, I still have 1 damage left. We'll clear that. And questing for 2 was actually also very good. Not sure where she fits in the Emerald constructed decks, unless we start seeing a shift to Emerald Steel, uh, maybe as a way to protect itself from the Steel Song deck. Radigan, Criminal Mastermind. Um, 4-costed inkable 4/1 with 2 lore and evasive. The one willpower hurts, but it's passable. Again, because evasive. Now, it's fighting for a lot of space in the evasive decks because all of the good evasive characters have 2 lore. We got the 4-drop Tinkerbell, we got Pongo, we have the Minnie Mouse from this set. We have the 5-drop Tinkerbell in Amethyst. You've got Goofy in Ruby and Tigger in Ruby. And that's just the ones that I can come up with. So we've definitely packed the 2 lore characters. And you could absolutely right now build a budget evasive deck with just commons and uncommons, not even talking about looking at rares. Um, that deck was pretty good to begin with, and it might be one I explore on the channel later on after we get through with the set reviews. Speaking of evasives, Ray is easygoing Firefly, 5-cost inkable 3/3, 3 lore, evasive, common. Everything I just said about Radigan a minute ago also applies to Ray. There aren't many 3 lore evasives, particularly at this rarity. The stat line is not great. Goofy, as we all know, is a 3/4 for 5 inkable with 2 lore and evasive. So he's a little more susceptible, but to removal. But I see that 3 lore, and I'm just licking my chops. This is so good. Ah, yes, the Queen, Disguised Peddler. So this super rare is one we saw a few weeks ago at this point. 3-cost, non-inkable, 2/3, absolutely no lore, but exert, choose and discard character card, gain lore equal to the discarded character's lore. Now, that lore number is printed lore. That is not... so any character that gets a bonus to lore based on its own card stats, she won't be able to see it. Now, the Flynn Rider that we saw earlier, yeah, you can absolutely use her ability no matter how many cards your opponent has in hand. And when you discard Flynn Rider, it's got 4 printed lore, so you're going to gain 4 lore. Again, this is another card that could see some combo potential where you could constantly loop discarding a high lore character and then bringing the card back to your hand or top of your deck, and do it again the next turn. Or if you've got multiple queens out, you can do them multiple times in a turn. So this one has some excellent combo potential. This is maybe it's not ready now, but keep your eye out on the future. Now, speaking of more 3 lore characters, Tiana True Princess, 5-costed inkable 5/3 with 3 lore. Blank as she may be, and I do mean blank, no game text, vanilla. The 5 strength means if you challenge her, you're probably going down. And that 3 lore though is amazing. Um, there have been a few characters from set one that are otherwise blank that you can exert for 3 lore that were playable. Um, so it's not without the realm of possibility. Um, if I when I look at this card, I see this is a limited bomb because the stats are great. Having 3 lore means your opponent's going to absolutely has to remove this Tiana from the board or get wrecked because if she quests more than once, he's in trouble. Verana Fang Chief. So 5 cost inkable, 5/5 with 2 lore common, vanilla or villain and queen. Again, this is for this particular set. After we've seen all the other cards, uh, this is a great card in limited, based on the numbers and the stat line. And having 2 lore is pretty gravy. All right, now into the actions and songs. Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. There's a lot of talk about this card. Even though it is non inkable, you get to return chosen character of yours to your hand to play another character with the same cost or less for free. So, according to um, um, Steve, who is the lead designer for the game and who is on the official Ravensburger made Lorcana Discord, and I will put the link in the chat tonight. Completely forgot to do it on the last two, but he states that what happens with this card is you can return a character that you have in play to your hand. It has changed zones and is no longer known as far as being visible to both players. You can look in your hand. You can play another character if you want, but you can also just return that character to your hand and then replay the same one, because the rules it does the game rules doesn't know that it's not the same one, that it's not a different character. You may have 2 in your hand with the same name. So obviously, where this gets powerful is characters that have interplay abilities like Elsa Spirit of Winter, Maleficent Dragon, um, uh, Merlin Rabbit, Merlin Goat in this set, um, where you're drawing cards when he leaves, you're drawing cards when he comes back in, and when he enters, or you're gaining a lore when he leaves and a lore when he comes back into play. Um, It'll also let you just swap out. Hey, I need a this 6 drop isn't good right now. I need the other one. Oh, look, I have these 2 cards in hand. Well, let me swap these 2. Fantastic. It also lets you get double shenanigans on um, things like Genie on the Job. Uh, I played this and I turned your character to your hand. On the next turn, I quest for 2. I bibbity bobbity boo, return him to my hand, replay him ready, and bounce a thing again. Also, that's another very useful trick. Is you can quest with a character, play bibbity bobbity boo, return the character to your hand, replay the same character. Now he's ready, and that significantly changes what your opponent can do because now you can't be challenged unless you know have one of the powerful steel songs or steel cards that let you do additional challenges. So think about that when you're playing this. I really blew a couple of people's mind when I did that on Saturday. Speaking of bounce, let's bounce. Um, so um, you do have to have two targets for this: a character you control and a character your opponent controls. Now, this is not a song, so it has to be played. You have to pay the resources, and it's not inkable. But what I will tell you is, um, being able to quest or challenge your opponent's character, and maybe you banish their character off one of their characters off the table, but you've got a bunch of damage counters on yours. You can you can bounce your now damaged character back to your hand, bounce your opponent's character, and now you've essentially removed all the damage from it. You get to play it fresh, either that turn or the next turn, and you've removed a threat off the table that your opponent's going to have to replay. Um, and that's not counting all the other shenanigans with interplay triggers and with uh, all of the Merlin shenanigans that you got going on. This card is going, but between this and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, your opponents are going to be very frustrated with the shenanigans you're going to be doing in Emerald. Hypnotize. So again, this is part of the discard deck. Um, this is not a song either, but it is um, 3 cost. Each opponent discards a card. You draw a card. Obviously, these are also flavored for multiplayer. Um, while I prefer the characters um, that stay in play over these one-shot effects, getting multiple triggers, like say Little John, or not Little John, but Prince John, um, where you force them to discard a card. You'll draw a card for this, and then you'll draw a card for each Prince John in play. Really adds up to a lot of card advantage over time. That's why this deck is going to be annoying. Um, again, removal, particularly non-targeted removal, will kind of determine how painful this deck is to play against. Improvise. Um, so it gives your character strength bonus. You draw a card. It is inkable. Um, could it be a part of a deck with a character like Pete or like Pain? Sure. I just don't think there's a density of these cards. There's a cycle of these cards um, in this set that try to make actions and or songs better as far as letting you recoup a card, put a new card, redraw a new card. Um, so again, it may be something to look at in the future. Right now, it's it was not great, at least in limited play for me. Constructed, it's a coin flip with what they're trying to do. I just don't think there's enough of them. Pack tactics. Uh, Forecasted inkable. Gain 1 lore for each damaged character opponents have in play. Well, typically, if I'm doing damage to my opponent's characters, I want them all to be off the table quickly. So I don't know how effectively this will be playable. Um, the only deck that I see reliably putting damage on characters that may not immediately remove them uh, is going to be Emerald Steel. Uh, so Do we want to waste an action potentially where we could gain lore um, when we could simply finish com- uh, clearing their board, and then we are unimpeded from gaining more of the lore ourselves? Um, I just think this one's a wash. It just doesn't seem like it's enough, even though I like the idea. This card was surprisingly effective. Ring the bell, banish chosen damaged character. Um, so similar to Last Stand, um, this is an easy way to potentially get a dangerous character off the board. Paired with steel, particularly when you have things like Hans 13th in line. You've got the one spread damage with Tinkerbell, Giant Fairy, um, and you've got several cards in this set that deal low amounts of damage. Um, you can then just simply go, let's get you off the table. Um, Full disclosure, I removed the super rare Cheshire Cat from play by tapping the Robin Hood, the two-costed Robin Hood that was previewed long ago. Put one damage counter on it, and then I top decked this card before it was going to start completely wrecking me, and I just went, I remove your Cheshire Cat, and my opponent was picked up the card and looked at it, and it was like, I was about to wreck face, and I said, "Yeah, I know you were. That's the reason I had to get it off the table." Um, Constructed again. I think there's only a couple of decks or a couple of color combinations that would want this. Um, Ruby likes to challenge things, although it wants to get them completely off the board. There are going to be some situations where you can't get it off the board and it's damaged. This might be a nice mop up action, and then the other steel that can go, oh, we'll ping that, okay, we'll get you off the table. Definitely for limited, if you draft enough removal and know there's going to be combat or challenging going on, it'll be very easy to get those characters off the board. And lastly is Radican's Marvelous Trap. Um, it's not my favorite. Each opponent loses two lore. I think this is, to me, this feels like a card that you play in the multiplayer. Um, right now, I do not see this being played in constructed or limited. It's just not gonna hang. All right, guys. Thank you for joining me again with the review of Emerald. Um, Tell me in the comments below if um, one of your favorite I said one of your favorite cards was in this set was going to be good for Emerald, or tell me if you disagree with one of my thought processes here. I'd like to know your thoughts. Uh, Again, thank you for joining us. Until next time, no matter the game, there is no escape.